Hello and hello. Thank you so much for joining me today. How you guys doing? I'm amused. I don't know what I've stumbled across here. A thread on Reddit from a deleted user with 0 upvotes. It's in r slash ask a German. American is the title. What things piss Germans off the most about American tourists? And I mean, honestly, I'm already intrigued by that question. I mean, I won't lie, to be honest. It's a very rude question. But I do know that American tourists can piss some people off. So it is what it is. But I'm just intrigued because there's 88 responses. 0 thumbs up. And the very top comment, let's see. Nothing. I like Americans. Hey! At least the ones I've met have been super friendly, funny, and open. But one thing that stood out to me was when I worked in a museum and some American went up to me and said, I want to get everything possible that you have to offer. What does that mean? At the museum? What do you guys have to offer at the museum? Me, the price is all inclusive. There's nothing you could pay extra for. Him, I'm here with my kids and I want to get them the full experience. Me, ... Him, can we get into the factory? Into the factory? What is this, Willy Wonka? Does he know that art isn't, like, produced like... It's not manufactured. At least not good art. I mean, I don't know what kind of museum was this. He says, no, the factory is not open right now. Him, I want my kids to experience everything. I think this was a missed opportunity, dude. This guy was willing to pay anything. Was this like Jeff Bezos or something? I think you could have been a billionaire, dude, if you had just unlocked the factory. Me, well, they can experience everything upstairs. Him runs off. That is the... That guy had to be drunk. You can't say he's a bad dad, though. A little weird. Can't say he's a bad dad. I don't know. Maybe I'm interpreting this all wrong, but to him, it seemed like money expenses expands the rules for him. That is strange. You know what's a little bit particularly strange about that is, out of everything wrong with America, like bribing police and stuff, that's not a thing. Like, it's not like you can just slip people some money and get favors. Unless they're politicians, then you absolutely can. Not necessarily an only American thing, of course, but I don't know. This story lives in my head. Yeah, that is weird. I think in USA, museums usually offer bonus stuff, like meeting a guy in a mascot suit. Or getting stickers or something. I don't know why, but reading you guys like Germans just speculate about what must be going on in the USA. Like, I think at their museums, they have mascots that you can pay for. It might be true. I don't know. Actually, I mean, honestly, you Germans have the weirdest fucking museums in the world. And don't get me wrong, they're cool as hell. But don't you guys have, like, the most museum per square kilometer in the world or something? You guys are the ones with the weird museums, okay? Our museums, kind of boring, a lot of them. Anyway. Quote, I'm basically German because my great-great-great uncle had a German wife. That's it for me, actually. Other than that, I have not perceived other stereotypical behavior. Interesting. I mean, part of what's interesting about that to me is it does kind of, as stupid as it is, like this whole like, oh, my great uncle was German, so I'm part German. Yay! Like, it's pretty silly, but it does go to show that Americans, there is something like alluring and mystical to us about Europe. And like being European, you know, like we're like proud, like, yeah, I'm part German, dude, and part Hungarian. How cool is that? What makes Americans stand out for me most for me is how loud they are. That's pretty typical. They're basically yelling at each other while sitting or while talking. Why am I dyslexic today? Damn it. It's not a good day for me to be reading Reddit comments when I can't even read. They're basically yelling at each other while talking, and it seems to be impossible to sit down quietly without shouting and scraping chairs across the floor and dropping something loudly on the table or making any other kind of noise. And every exclamation is a loud noise. Oh, look at that house! Or, they have chocolate cake! You know what does exemplify this a bit? Is it's especially Americans on vacation. Like, that's when Americans are at their most rowdy if to America, like Americans having a good time, a factor in that is just like letting loose, being loud, being silly. So I'm sure the Americans that you guys encounter on vacation in Europe are us at our most rowdy. With that said, now, don't get me wrong, here in America, I mean, there are a lot of people who just have this quality to their voice where it's like they can't talk quietly. And it does seem to be either inherited or learned, like it's on a family basis, you know. You'll be out at a restaurant and like an entire family will just be so loud. It's almost impressive. I mean, these people make great like coaches, you know. They can be outside on a soccer field and you can hear them easily across the entire field. And they're not even trying to talk loud. It's a strange thing. And I sound like I'm joking, but I'm really not even joking. Like, I think that they do it from a young age and they have a strong, like some people grow up with a strong voice. I'm not one of them. And sometimes I wish I was, to be honest. If you have a quiet voice like I do, it is pretty goddamn annoying how here in America you can get spoken over. You know, people will talk over you a little bit more because a lot of people have loud voices. There also just isn't that much of like a faux pas as far as being loud, especially in most restaurants, unless it's really fancy. Just people just don't really care for the most part about like other people being loud. How was life in Germany after the war? How should I know? I wasn't born yet. Well, then I guess you would only know what life is like after the war. Now, before the war might be hard for you to say. This is a question I've been asked several times, and it always leaves me speechless for a moment. Just for clarification, yes, 2024 is also after the war, but that was never the meaning of the question. Right, they're kind of meaning like compared, you know, like how would you compare after the war to before the war? They probably want to hear stories of hunger, homelessness, and, quote, kind U.S. soldiers handing out chocolates to the kids. Be honest, I never heard that. U.S. soldiers handing out chocolates to the kids. Nothing really pisses me off, but what I find a bit annoying is the, quote, I'm German as well, because they have some German relative far down their ancestry, and them being super loud in public transport. You know, I will say being loud on an airplane, like that is a faux pas. So I'm surprised for some reason Americans don't seem to transfer that to like trains. And I have given this some thought, this whole notion and this reality, this phenomenon that Americans are always saying, you know, I'm German, I'm Italian, I'm British, when they're American. And I think it's because they, you know, like here in America, 90% of people, maybe less, but a huge percentage of people are just American that you run into. You know, you're not running into French people and Austrians and Danish and British people and Italians and people from all over, you know, because there's just not that many countries here. I mean, from coast to coast, it's USA. Canadians, there's really not that many of them. And they, you know, I mean, yeah, they traveled down to America, but only to certain parts. Mexicans, I mean, you can tell by looking at most Mexicans that they're Mexican. So my point is, we don't have that aspect of, you know, when you meet someone new, there's no aspect of like, oh, you know, where are you from? You know, oh, I'm French, I'm from Paris. There's nothing like that. So we substitute that, this is my theory, we substitute that with this kind of like heritage thing where it's like, oh, I'm German because my ancestors were, you know, it's like a little icebreaker. It's a little fact about myself. You know, I'm German. It's very much equivalent to like, what's your sign? You know, your zodiac sign. I don't know if you guys do that. That's a pretty ridiculous thing that people do here, you know, but it's like an icebreaker thing. You know, you meet somebody new. It's like, what's your sign? You know, what's your heritage? And the reason they phrase it like that, you know, I'm German, is because no one in America, very few people in America are actually from Germany. So that phrase, I'm German, isn't being used by like a large population of people to mean they're from Germany. Am I making any sense? Let's move on. Either claiming to be German just because this is the same thing, or the loudness. Wow, it's the loudness and the saying they're German. And it's funny because I'm sure I'm used to this. As an American, I'm used to people speaking loudly when it's unnecessary. But I bet to you guys, it almost feels like, like how it's like, dude, I'm not deaf. Like, I'm not like 95 years old. Like, my hearing works, okay? You don't need to scream at me. That's probably how you feel. And I would be surprised. They say Nazi jokes, which is interesting. I mean, I could definitely see that, although I would be surprised. I mean, I'm never surprised at one dumbass saying something stupid. I mean, there's hundreds of millions of Americans, and some are total dumbasses. But in American culture, and we're kind of famous for it, we try not to be offensive. So to say a Nazi joke to a German, a little bit surprising. This might be why this thread is so downvoted. Apparently, every American comes to this subreddit and just asks, "Hey, what do you guys think about us? What do you hate about us?" Superiority complex. I could see Americans doing this without even realizing it or like intending to. They wouldn't think they have a superiority complex, but it's like how on the internet, a lot of Americans assume everybody else is American and kind of assume the whole world is revolving around America. But hey, then again, I will be a little bit of a devil's advocate and say, trust me, I've read lots of comments from Europeans that have a superiority complex. Like they think Europe is like just America's a third world country and Europe is it, man. Which is, I mean, hey, I'm glad people are happy where they live, to an extent. It's when you start putting down other people, people from other places where it's annoying. The blood talk? I don't know what that is. And standing on cycleways. Ooh, I bet that's a big thing because Americans just aren't even used to those existing. Not reacting to a ringing bell right in their heels. That is really kind of funny because I could see that. I could absolutely see that because that's just not a normal. I mean, if I was standing, obviously I'm less ignorant than a lot of Americans would be because I react to a lot of things in Europe. And I'm a pretty considerate person in general. But pretending I'm not, and I'm standing in what looks to be kind of like a path, I'm not aware enough to notice like bicycle signs. If I heard ringing behind me, I don't know. I could see how some Americans would just like blissfully unaware that ringing is at them to get the hell out of the way and that they're in a bike path. Now, what is blood talk? That's what I want to know. Germany once had a regime which postulated your Germanness by looking at your family's heritage bloodline in Germany to exclude and murder a lot of people. They called it blood and soil. Wow, I had to like read this twice because it's so foreign to me. I mean, I think we're referring to Nazis, and we're tying that to talking about like your heritage, like, oh, I'm from Germany or I'm German. Talking about your bloodline is from Germany, and they're tying that to white supremacy. This is the same thing. It's just the way this is worded is funny already to me. They are so freaking loud. It's incredible. My mom has an American boyfriend who visits a lot, but still can't manage his voice volume. He's one of these people I described. We're sitting in the kitchen talking, and he will just chime in with, hello! How are you doing? It's like he always screams at me. And thinking about this more, a lot of parents, particularly dads, will raise their kids like it's a good attribute. The dad with the loud voice will teach his son, like, you need to speak up. You want to be loud. You need people to hear you, and you need to be confident in what you're saying. You shouldn't have to repeat yourself. So you'll, like, that's kind of the idea. And so you'll hear dads saying to their sons or whatever, speak up. You need to speak up much louder, which I imagine would be a pretty foreign thing, especially in Germany, where I know you guys respect a lot of peace and quiet. Don't tip like you are at home. Leave your tipping culture in America. Now, that is a little shocking to me and frankly confusing. And if I had to guess, in fact, I've read comments from waiters and stuff from Germany and other countries that say they love the American customer because they tip so way too much. You know, it's like, whoa, that was unnecessary. So why would this be annoying to anyone? I mean, other than the person leaving a huge tip, which in this instance would be me, the American, leaving some enormous tip that isn't expected at all, how would that annoy anyone? Other than some kind of implication that by doing that, I'm contributing to like bringing that American tipping culture to Germany. And obviously, you guys don't want that. But I mean, on what scale is one person tipping? You know, if I go to Germany and I tip 20% for a burger or, you know, for a bratwurst, is that really contributing in any meaningful way to like bringing tipping culture to Germany? I guess in the most small way possible. I mean, the only person who even knows that you left that tip is the waiter, right? Finally, I found someone saying something different. I mean, they're also saying loud, but they're saying their fashion sense annoys some people. I'm trying to think of how it would be annoying. Like, is it just like, could it be perceived as disrespectful? Like, if you underdress at like a restaurant? Me, nothing at all. We live in a tourist area south of Munich, and we are often in Munich, and there are plenty of them. Yes, many of them reduce Germany to beer, yodel music, and Oktoberfest, but that's typical, and pretzels. But that's typical tourist. Also German tourist way of thinking. Yes, they expect that wherever they are, somebody speaks English, but simply because it's true. Oh, that's interesting. It's interesting to say, you know, it's true. I mean, it's definitely something I've noticed. I mean, obviously, a lot of you do speak English because I wouldn't have a YouTube channel with any subscribers if there weren't a ton of you guys speaking English. So a ton of you guys speak English, which is very impressive and very fortunate for me and Americans traveling to Germany. Yes, and other English-speaking countries, obviously, as well, you know, traveling to Germany. Yes, some of them look for the GDR border fence or the Berlin Wall or try to find out when President Hitler will appear in public. Huh? Some think Hitler's still going, huh? And yes, this is a little bit typical for Americans. Yes, they often talk rather loud. How do you know that some Americans are at the other end of the streetcar? You hear it. It's a good one. But in common, they are friendly folks, just looking for fun and a nice holiday. That's true. Like, that really is what Americans are mostly looking for. And they will, you know, Americans, typically a relatively optimistic group of people, you know, like they're going to find the fun one way or another. And it might be annoying because you might even be like, why are you so loud and just like giddy about nothing? And it's because they're going to make their holiday fun, whether it's fun or not. Open-minded for contacts, just sit close to them in the beer garden. Some say superficial, today friends, tomorrow forgotten, but this is how holiday acquaintances work. And with some we met, we are still in contact. That's awesome. We even visited them or friends of them. That's really special. That's pretty cool. I'm done on that one. That was a great one. That was a great comment. And it didn't even have any thumbs up. Like, this is all the way at the bottom. So, that was a good comment. I enjoyed that. That was a good thread. Fun. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.